Hello, my loves. Welcome back to another episode of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. Okay, so we have a really bomb solo episode for you today, all about how to navigate the dark night of the soul. So wherever you are, whether you're just in a moment of doubt and confusion and challenge, or if you are literally in a moment where you are brought to your knees and the whole rug is ripped out from under you, this episode is going to be so helpful for you. But for whatever reason, the universe decided that when I shot this episode, the whole episode would be out of focus. And it's the first time that that has ever happened. And it just kind of looks like shit and it's a little bit distracting. So for this episode, it is going to be an audio only episode, but I promise you're still going to get the wisdoms, the teachings, the learnings, and maybe you can just put on your headphones, go on a little walk, enjoy nature, and we won't be looking at each other for this episode, but that's okay. I still wanted to release it because it still had a lot of really great nuggets of wisdom in the episode. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this audio only episode. You can kick and scream. You can be angry, you can feel all the feelings, but if you resist this moment, if you resist what is, it will create more suffering. So step one is whenever you are in the void, you have to surrender. We're back, baby, with a brand new season of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. Join us each week as we have unfiltered conversations about how to transform your life. Our mission is to usher in a new era of spirituality where you don't have to be all love and light to live a life of alignment. Here, we honor all of it, the profound and the profane, the magic and the messy, and all things that make you human. So let's discuss the truth behind transformation and be unapologetic in our evolution. From manifestation to money, embodiment to energy, and all taboo topics, nothing is going to be off limits. Are you ready to live a life that feels just as good as it looks? Let's get fucking spiritual. Hey, what's up, my friends? And welcome back to another episode of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. Another solo one today. I was feeling into what I wanted to do this episode about, and it's something that I haven't talked about here before, but that I know so many of us listening to this podcast, most humans, I would imagine, go through this at some point in their lives or at multiple points in their lives. And maybe you are someone that is in this space right now. Maybe that's why you clicked on this episode. And today I want to talk about how to navigate the dark night of the soul. So we hear this a lot in spiritual spaces. Dark night of the soul is when everything crashes and burns, when everything falls apart, when the entire life that you once knew it as is no longer there. It's no longer real. Maybe it's a big spiritual awakening. Maybe it's the loss of a job. Maybe it's a breakup or the loss of a relationship. Maybe it is a shift in your consciousness and a seeing things completely differently and a realization that you can no longer live your life in the way you once did. And what I'll say is, for me and for this episode, the way I'm defining dark night of the soul is any time that you are in the space of the void. Now, some people will argue that you have one huge dark night of the soul in your life. And while that might be true if it's a huge spiritual awakening or something like that, for me, I personally have had multiple dark nights of the soul. I'd say I've had 2 large dark nights of the soul and then other little spaces that are just mini spaces of the void, spaces of loss, spaces of uncertainty, spaces and times where I've had to recalibrate to a new way of being, let go of an old pattern, let go of a person or a place or habits, and navigated a time of uncertainty and being in the void. And so whether you are going through a huge dark night of the soul at this moment where your entire life is shattered and your whole way of being is changing, or you're simply in a space of uncertainty, in a space of being in the liminal space between two worlds where you are letting go of your old identity, letting go of the way that it once was in your life, and you are yet to be in the flow of a new way of being. Wherever you find yourself right now, I hope that this episode will give you some peace of mind and also some action steps about how to navigate this time in your life with as much grace as you can, when I know that can be challenging. So the first thing I want to say is, if you are in the space of the void right now, if you are in your current dark night, I know that it can feel like it's going to last forever. I know that it can feel scary, and it can feel challenging, and it can feel hard, and it can feel uncertain. And I just want to speak into you that this won't be the way that your life is forever. And you get to trust and surrender into the fact that this is preparing you for something so much greater than you could have ever imagined. And you don't have to see it or know it yet. And I know that that can feel scary in the moment. And so I just want to speak into that first and foremost, that every single time that we go through a crash and a burn in our lives, it is always clearing space or preparing us for the greater manifestation to come in. It's preparing us in our soul of who we are meant to be, and allowing us to evolve on our path and our soul's evolution. And so you get to trust that you are coming into a greater version of you, coming into a greater communion with your own soul. You get to trust that this is happening for you, even when that feels hard. Which that kind of brings me to step one of how to navigate a dark night of the soul. You can kick and scream. You can be angry. You can feel all the feelings. But if you resist this moment, if you resist what is, it will create more suffering. So step one is, whenever you are in the void, you have to surrender. And that can feel really hard. And it's like, how do I surrender? How do I do that? I don't even know, right? And it's a time to really lean in to the teachings of everything is happening for you, of trusting in the unseen, of trusting in the uncertainty. And if your void is coming in the space of the loss of a relationship, or if it's coming in the space of the loss of a business, or the shifting of your business, or the loss of a career, or loss of any kind, loss of a friend or a family member, whether that's through death or just a breaking of a relationship, you get to trust that it's happening for you. You get to trust that the universe, God, spirit, whatever you call it, is clearing the path and clearing the way for you to step into a new version of you. That right now, in this moment, your body and your being is being prepared for what is to come, being prepared for what it is that you've asked for, being prepared for what it is that you have called in. And you get to trust in this moment instead of fighting it. And what that looks like is connect to your breath, connect to sensation, connect to the present moment. Be where your feet are, and know that you don't have to know the next steps right now. You don't. As human beings, we really love certainty because certainty keeps us safe. And our inner child really wants certainty because our inner child loves structure and wants to know that everything is going to be okay. And this time can bring up a lot of patterning. It can bring up a lot of wounding. It can bring up a lot of ways of being or belief systems that are coming to the surface right now, and trust that they're coming to the surface for you to feel them and transmute them. Which brings me to number 2, how to navigate this, is to feel the feelings that are coming up in this moment. Feel the fear. Feel the uncertainty. Feel the wavering. Feel the feelings that come up when you're like, I don't fucking know. I don't know what's next. And the way you feel your feelings, I just mentioned it, but is to get into your breath and get into your sensations. Yes, you can journal about it. Yes, you can talk to friends about it. But so much of the dark night of the soul asks for us to be with ourselves, ask for us to be in the space between two worlds. And for me, I'll go on a side tangent for a second. For me, I mentioned that I've been in two dark nights of the soul, really deep dark nights of the soul. And one of them was 7 years ago when I was in a freak accident and my entire life was not working. I was working a corporate job that I hated. I was numbing out with drugs and alcohol. I was surrounding myself with people who were not helping me get anywhere that I wanted to be in life. And I was completely disconnected from my true essence, from my true power, and from what I really wanted to do and be who I wanted to be in the world. And I had a massive dark night of the soul and awakening at this time. I would have considered myself atheist. I was not into any self-development teachings. I didn't know about this world at all. I had never even listened to a podcast. And it was in my early 20s. And it was through a freak accident and being forced to take 3 months medical leave that I laid in bed and realized this cannot be my life. No way is this my fucking life. I was like, I know I have so much to give the world. I know I have so much talent. I know that I have so much that I want to be and do and create. And I don't know what that is. And I don't know what that looks like. But there's this tugging that is deep in my soul that I'm meant for more. And I don't want to get to the end of my life and realize that I didn't do anything good with the gifts that I had been given. And it was that time in my life that I, being a bit of an extremist in the way that I am, decided to rip the Band-Aid and quit the job and break up with the boyfriend and leave the friend group and leave the habits and get sober. And I entered a very dark night of the soul where my whole entire life blew up in front of me. And in that time, I chose to go inward for the very first time in my life when I had dissociated for many, many, many years because of trauma. And it was the first time that I'd say I was able to meet myself and maybe feel for the first time. And little did I know I would have a huge journey ahead of me. But at that time, I thought, okay, great. I'm waking up to this new way of being. I had this huge spiritual awakening. I knew that I wanted to do other things in my life than what I was doing. And I took action toward that. But I spent a solid 3 months recovering from my accident, another 3 full months in isolation. And it wasn't another 3 months after that. So a solid 9 months that I was really in the dark night and in the void. And I was in this space between two worlds where I didn't have any of the life that used to be familiar to me. And yet I didn't know where I was going. But at the same time, I had this almost naive sense of awe and wonder of this new world that I had discovered. And I was walking this path alone. And that would be the foundation that would set me on the trajectory to eventually 7 years later to be sitting in front of you here now, teaching what I've been through and connecting with so many of you who have gone through similar things on your path. And my second dark night of the soul was a year ago. And it was when I took the year off of the podcast. And it was when I had gotten to a place where I'd created a lot of the stuff that I thought that I wanted and realized it wasn't the ticket or the key to the happiness and the fulfillment that I was looking for. And also I was unknowingly very I-focused at the time. And it was all about bigger and better and more and manifesting and being in the right rooms. And, it was all ego serving because the little girl in me so badly wanted to be seen, heard, known, and acknowledged. And she wanted to feel like she had a purpose in the world. And it was beautiful because that version of me did a lot of good. And at the same time, I was thrust into my second dark night of the soul when I realized all the things that I had worked for weren't the things that made me feel happy and fulfilled. And I entered into another liminal space where I let go of everything I thought I knew and walked away from what I had built and walked away from the business that I had built at the time and the podcast and at the height of my career at that moment, and chose to go within again. And that is when I spent 3 full months in isolation, doing somatic work and really healing from the inside out. And when I came out of that space, I restarted the podcast and told you guys a bit about the journey that I've been through on the relaunch of the podcast on episode 2 of this season. And it's been a beautiful year of integrating and coming back out into the world as this new version of me and still learning and growing and expanding. And I feel that I'm finally reaching a place where I'm actually in a flow of who I am now in this iteration and version of me. And it feels much deeper and much more grounded and much more solid and much more exciting in many ways. And I guess that brings me to number 3 for you guys is whenever you're entering a dark night of the soul or you are in a void, often what got you here won't get you there. So a lot of the habits, a lot of the ways of being, a lot of the ways of thinking, a lot of the things that you're putting up with or did put up with in your life to this point, you'll probably recognize no longer align with you. And so you have to look at all your ways of being that are not a match for the life that you truly want to live and are not a match for your soul's truth and essence of who you're actually here to be. And so number 3 is taking time and space to yourself, not numbing it out, not dissociating in this moment, not going out with a million friends or scrolling on social media or numbing out with your favorite ways to numb. And you know what those are for you. You have to take time alone. And I don't like saying the word have to, but for me, it's been a requirement. And you don't need to spend 3 full months in isolation like I did. But you do get to take a lot of time to yourself to be with all of the ways of being that got you here to this moment. And to ask yourself the question, what is this moment asking of me now? What am I meant to learn here in this moment? Who am I meant to become? What ways of being and what ways of thinking are no longer aligning with me? What people in my life are no longer aligning with me? Take an inventory of your life when you are alone. I believe that's really the only way that we can actually shift and make change and transform. And for me, that has been extreme. For you, that might look differently. But it's a requirement that we take time alone, because if we continue down the path of doing the same things that we've done, it just eats away at your soul more and more and more. And instead, give yourself the gift of actually taking time by yourself to look at all the ways of being that have gotten you here and the ways in which your soul is asking to evolve. And that can be confronting. Oh my God. Oh my God, can it be confronting? But if you're somebody that's listening to this podcast, then I would imagine you are here for your own evolution, and you're here because you know that there's something deeper within you that is meant to rise. You're here because you want growth. You're here because you want expansion. You're here because you want you want to meet a deeper sense of yourself. So 3 is be in isolation, be in the aloneness, be in the void. Allow yourself to have this moment. And then that kind of goes into number 4, which I somewhat mentioned in number 3. But number 4 is look at all the ways of being that didn't work and identify all of the things that you want to call in now in this next season. Because the dark night of the soul, the moments of uncertainty in the void, they're not going to last forever, but they are going to require you that you become a better version of yourself. These are potent, pivotal moments that, if you let them, will change the course and the trajectory of your life. And I personally believe that we go through multiple of these in our lifetime. And if we use them as a catalyst, they can be the greatest transformation of our life. So look at all the ways of being that are no longer working for you and identify the ways of being that you want to call in now. Identify what it is that you want in your life now. So if the void was created by a breakup, or the void was created by a job that didn't fully jive with you and you don't know what you're going to do now, identify all of the patterns that you showed up in that you weren't proud of or that didn't work for you. Identify what about that job, that breakup, that old iteration and way of being, identify the ways that that didn't work for you, and identify the things that you're calling in now. And also know that sometimes when you're in a dark night of the soul, doing step 4 might take you a while. So don't bypass just being in the feeling and surrendering to the unknown and feeling the feelings and the fear that are coming up in this moment. Sometimes it might take you a while. Sometimes you might be like, I don't know. And if you don't know, that's okay. You can always set the intention for it to reveal itself. And yeah, I know I mentioned it at the beginning, but if you are in the dark night right now, just know it's serving you and that it's not going to last forever. So I hope that this little mini episode gave you some peace, gave you some action steps, and gave you a sense of knowing that this is a moment of transformation for you. This is a moment that your soul chose to evolve. And this is a moment that you can lay an even more solid foundation for the rest of your life. So if you're going through this, I feel for you right now in this moment. As someone that just got out of the dark night of the soul about a year ago and has now found my new footing, things are better than I could ever have imagined in this now moment in my life. And it's finally starting to all flow and transform and feel so good again. And from being now out on the other side, I can hold that torch and that light for you as well. So I hope that this was helpful for you. And hang in there. I promise it will get better. And with that, I love you. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. I am so glad that you're here. And if this episode resonated with you, I invite you to share this with a friend that you feel needs to hear it. And if you are really feeling the love and support for this show, this podcast thrives off of your listens and your reviews. So I would love if you could leave us an honest review. We would love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your questions, and it helps us get this podcast in the hands of more people and would mean so much to me to receive your support. So thank you.